wants to let a big group in?
Yep.
Okay. All right, let me switch back over here to my narration piece. All right, welcome again, everyone. So we're down to, where are we? Session 4. So I think this is officially our halfway point, right? Um, 2 more to go after this, and you guys are hanging in there great. So today, we're going to be covering strategic planning. And, oh, I'm sorry. Let me get Rebecca to share her screen for where we are today. So you can see where we are before I go too far.
There we
Great,
go.
thank you.
Mhm.
Appreciate it. So as you can see, this is our agenda for today. A couple of things we'll be skipping around in terms of introduction, so on and so forth. I think we'll do that as we go forth through our breakout groups. But strategic planning, just a quick overview, nothing deep. But we're going to go over strategic planning, which I'm sure most of you know helps to organizations chart a clear path forward and stay focused on what matters most. So our session today will walk you through each stage of the planning process, right? We're going to go from assessing needs, defining visions, setting goals, writing the plan, and tracking progress. And again, going through all this is to ensure strategies that you're putting in place are actionable, measurable, and adaptable over time. As usual, when we go through, we'll have breaks throughout the day as we see as necessary. And that's about it. So we're going to jump right into the material today with an icebreaker. So hold on a minute, guys. I know you're curious. Make us do, right? But I'm just checking to make sure I don't need to bring anybody in, which I think I don't. Great. So as you see before you, and this is going to start off our icebreaker today in our breakouts. So just imagine you're in a dark cabin, right? All you have is one match. Which of the following would you light first? You're going to have an oil lamp, you're going to have a fireplace, and you're going to have a candle. Okay. So, what we want you to do when you break out into your groups, we want you to be able to reach consensus as a group and then come back and to report which of these items you would light first. So, let me go through that again. The dark cabin in the woods, everything is out. Hope you got some food, but otherwise, it's dark. You're alone in this cabin. You only have is one match, and you can't say the match. Okay, let me just say that first. Match is not one of those things. But which of these other 3 would you light first? An oil lamp, fireplace, or a candle? Any questions on that? We're going to break into groups, come to consensus, and then you're going to come back and report out what you decided. Okay? And you cannot pick the match. I'm going to say that again. Let me see if there's any questions in the chat. Everyone got it? If you have any questions, unmute yourself. Because like I said, Rebecca and I are managing 2 screens here, so feel free.
There's
No, you can't.
right.
Who's that? Miranda, you can't say the match. That's one of the rules. The match is not one of the choices. Just the oil lamp, the fireplace, or the candle. Sorry.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and put you all, you're going to get randomly assigned into your breakout rooms. They're not by role. They'll be in there for 10 minutes, and I'll put these instructions in the broadcast to the breakout room so you can remember what your choices are. And then we'll come back and report back to the group about what you all have decided. Any other final? Okay, great. I'll go ahead and open up the rooms, and we'll see you back here in 10 minutes.
Oh, that went quick. Good job, Rebecca.
Yep.
Miranda's laughing. She's funny. So when they come back, Dr. Palmer, I think you talked them to this part, right? Yeah, you do, Dr. Palmer. I went to the next screen, the reporting out part. Are we gonna, you're not gonna say anything about last session, right? We're good for you just to jump into it,
Um,
or you might before they report out.
we don't have it in the notes,
Mhm.
so I'm gonna,
Yeah, just jump right in.
yeah,
Okay.
I'm gonna press on, because this has so much material. I think we cut out a whole lot of the front part
Yeah.
because there's so many steps in here. So, oops. Yeah, we don't have it.
Let me see, why is that highlighted up here? Mm.
Hi, Mary Cruz.
Hmm.
We're in
Oh.
breakouts. So I was gonna pop you into a
Hello.
breakout. Hi.
Oh, okay. Hey.
I'll pop you into the group and they'll tell you what we're doing.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
Okay.
Think that going right into breakout is a really good change of
Mhm.
pace. You know what I mean? Like they get here and it's like,
Wakes
hey,
them up a little bit.
yeah, we're off and running
Like,
and
dang, I gotta talk to people this morning.
right,
Okay.
right. Like I gotta get it going.
I hope you all had fun. I think that's a fun exercise. So hopefully you guys had fun talking about it, had some good discussion. Hope no one got mad at anybody. Hope y'all resolved peacefully if you had any discussions
They
that
made
were
me be the
riled up.
tiebreaker, so it was like a
Uh-oh.
lot of pressure.
Oh,
Oh, good. Good. Wait till everybody finishes coming on in. Great. So great. I hope you guys had a great conversation. Again, I think that's one of our favorite breakout sessions because we think it's fun. So, but what you want to do, I'm sure you all hopefully were able to come to a group consensus. If not, we'd like to hear about what the process was and what was the process like of building consensus. And then lastly, how does this relate to the topic of strategic planning? So we may not be able to get to everyone, but would love to hear from a few people on your process. So would someone be willing to volunteer? Come on.
I
Come
will.
on. Great. Great. I can't see your face, but you must be on my other screen. Who is it?
Leslie right here.
Leslie, there you go.
Yeah. We decided on the oil lamp. I was the big advocate for the oil lamp because it's protected from the wind. You can get it lit, it'll last longer and be stable. You can light the candle and then light the fire, so you can have all of the sources of light and warmth together.
Okay. So can you tell us a little bit about how does that relate to strategic planning in your group's opinion?
Thinking about the steps that it takes and coming to a consensus together, thinking about different options, we had to
Mhm.
strategically plan on how we would get all three lit.
Was it an easy process? Was there any back and forth and convincing of others?
Fairly easy. We had someone say they would light, I think they said they would light the fire first,
Mm-hmm.
but there wasn't much back and forth.
Okay,
We decided quickly.
great. Can we have another volunteer? Maybe who picked something different?
I'll volunteer. Our group picked something different.
Okay, great, April.
Okay, so we actually decided to light the candle first. We had some discussion of the oil lamp and the fire and different options. So we decided that with the candle, it's a little more stable than a match. A fire is very difficult to light with a match. It can be done, but it's not always easy. And so we would light the candle, then using the candle to light the oil lamp and the fire. We had several different options that we discussed, but it was pretty easy to build consensus once we talked about our reasoning. And I think one of the ways it relates to strategic planning is everybody wanted to get to the same point of having everything lit, but there are different ways to get there. And so talking about the way that your group or your organization is going to get to that point helps with the planning process. Because even though there's multiple ways to get there, you want to be on the same page as to how you're going to get there.
Great. Thank you, April. Anyone have anything different than the oil or the candle?
If I can just add one thing from
Sure,
our
Kim.
group, everything is pretty much the same, but I think the ultimate goal was to make sure that the fireplace was lit because it doesn't really say how long you're going to be in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
And then knowing that you're in the woods, like you're always going to be able to find fire to keep the fire going once you have it lit.
Oh,
Interesting.
it's a different perspective. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. We have time for a third? Anyone else
Yeah.
pick anything? Or
I can just say one thing. I guess our answers have pretty much been spoken for. You know, it's like the sequence, different sequence, but the goal is to actually have all three lit up. But I guess we talked about sort of, the conditions in the woods. Is it raining? Is it windy? Depending on, we would prefer, like, oil lamp would be better than a candle. Candle being more portable, we could use it to light up the other two. So we kind of relating to strategic planning, we sort of talked about how the decisions might just, depend so much on what the environmental conditions are, which were sort of outside of the organization sometimes. So
Exactly right.
I would just
Thank
add I thought it was interesting, related to the topic of strategic planning, how we each brought a different perspective, what we thought might be good. So like I came in and I was like, I'm always cold. I want the fire lit. Let's just light the fire. And then April said, we burn wood in our house to heat our house. That's hard to do with a match. So we should actually like each of us bringing our particular angle on what we needed or what we thought was most important. And then having a conversation about like, how does that get us to our ultimate goal? But like, we each had different experiences and perspectives to bring to the conversation.
That's right. Thank you, Danielle. That's right. Great feedback. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you for that. That was great. So I appreciate you taking the time to do that and just get some blood flowing, some brain fluid moving. So Dr. Parmer, I think I'm gonna hand it on to you just to recap this session and this section and move on.
All right, great. Thank you. And good morning, everyone. Hopefully, going into the breakouts and prompting that intense focused discussion wasn't too much of an abrupt jump right back into our work today. But yes, we are here to learn more about strategic planning. And we're going to walk through quite a few of the steps in terms of the process, and we're going to do some hands-on work. But here are a few things that I heard in the kind of report out from your breakout groups. One is that there are different ways to approach strategic planning. Some organizations have resources internally to facilitate that process. And are able to get to the end potentially without an external resource. Some organizations decide that they're going to outsource that task and have a consultant facilitate that process. So there are different ways to get to the end. The other couple more things, I think it was Danielle that commented on the different perspectives that are present as a part of that process. One of the significant components of the strategic planning process is to get feedback from different stakeholders as to what should be in the plan or a plan going forward. And so not only different perspectives from the staff and say the board of directors, but also different perspectives from stakeholder groups in the community. It could be community partners, it could be donors, it could be individuals who participate in your programs. And so when you're mapping out your process, it is important to think about who do you want to hear from, or who do you want to chime in on what the organization is going to focus on over the time frame or the duration of the plan. So that's good. Sanji pointed out that her group talked about conditions. Wow, you talk about a pretty relevant way to think about planning these days, is the conditions or the environment in which the nonprofit organization exists, and how the environment can impact what process you use or how you approach strategic planning, or even the ideology around the usefulness of the strategic plan for your organization. So those were all pretty salient aspects. And then I think it was Leslie that pointed out in her group that, keep in mind that it doesn't have to be a hard task. Like it doesn't have to be difficult. We can work smart so that we can draw some conclusions fairly quickly and easily. If we keep our focus on, and Kim pointed this out, if we keep our focus on the North Star is complete developing a plan. That's the North Star, that we want to develop a plan. We agree that that's what we're going to do, and we stick with it until we get to that. Typically, the executive director, sometimes key staff, they play a significant role in the development and making sure that the plan is delivered, is a part of their role. Yes, the board oftentimes will be involved. Sometimes there's a strategic planning committee that nonprofits establish. And so that's another way to look at that. So thank you, Leslie, April, Kim, Sanji, and Danielle for sharing your feedback there. That's very, very, very helpful. And so if we could go to the gallery view, that would be great, just to kind of get us kind of where we need to be here. I do want to just gauge if you could maybe just use your hand raise feature if you have participated in a strategic planning process before. Have you ever participated in a strategic planning process before? Okay, all right, okay. Lovely, lovely, lovely. So I see quite a few of us have. All right. How many of you, and if you would just use your thumbs up feature, your hands raised feature again, how many of you have been a part of the leadership of that? So you've been kind of behind the scenes in the inner workings of how it all works. Because what I find is oftentimes when we query an organization, we'll ask, have you participated? And there's a difference in having been asked to do something to contribute to the process than actually being a part of the group that actually leads that effort. You have a different view of what it takes in order for your nonprofit to complete this task. So thank you. Thank you for giving me an idea as to how that all works. So where we're going to start is we're going to start by taking a look at two examples of two different plans. And Rebecca, I think you're going to show those on the screen. We're going to start with the Greater High Point Food Alliance. They are based in High Point, North Carolina. This is a organization that I work very, very closely with, in developing their plan. This plan stretches 2023 to 2025. And what you see here is a typical kind of way of framing a strategic plan or developing one. This is oftentimes what you see here is what will be included in the plan. So, you know, there's a cover, there's a table of contents that shows all of the different pieces of information that's in the plan. There is a message typically from the board chair and or the executive director. Minimally, there's a message from the executive director in a plan that's typically, doesn't have to be in there, but typically you do see that. Also, we typically show or write into a plan the mission and vision of the nonprofit organization that's typically there. A little bit of background in terms of the history of the organization. For this particular organization, there are two aspects of how they work. One, they kind of gave a backdrop of their history, and then they also shared, because they have 3 strategic ways in which they do their work through empowering, being unified, and self-sustaining. So that was something that they wanted illuminated in this plan. Oftentimes there's a list of the board of directors, and then notice the strategic planning team is noted at the bottom here. But typically you'll see information there. There is the process oftentimes is communicated in terms of the process that was used. This is the stakeholder feedback section of this plan. And so for this particular plan, they assessed their capacity. So they did a capacity assessment. They communicated through interviews with community leaders and partners. They got their input and feedback on the plan. You can go to the next. This was I'm sorry, back up one. This was a organization that focused on food insecurity. And so there was a surveying of the food pantries, because this is the Greater High Point Food Alliance. And so there's a gathering of organizations that make up this alliance, and food pantries is one of those stakeholder groups. So we surveyed the food pantry leaders, representatives. There are also community gardens in the community. So individuals that are part of that were surveyed. And then the board of directors did a report card. So they actually did an assessment of themselves, and that was communicated as well. You can go ahead to the next. This is a page that just lists all of the strategic goals. There were 5. You could keep going. And then for every goal, can you expand this just a little bit? I just want everyone to see. So for every goal in this plan, there's the goal, which one of the goals here was board recruitment, retention, and engagement. And then there's the goal statement. And then it was a 3-year plan, or it is a 3-year plan. And so the objectives were framed year 1, year 2, year 3, and also each year had a different focus. And then, of course, the typical things you would see, like who's responsible for this particular objective year, the year for this objective, and then when would this be completed, and then measures of progress. Notice that in the when column, in the overarching plan, there's typically a completion date in general. And then, of course, when you begin to work on the plan, the staff and the board together, you'll map out specific dates. And then measures of progress. There were actual resources and tools that this nonprofit was already doing. And so what we decided to do was capture the way to measure the progress utilizing existing tools that they already had, as opposed to creating new tools to measure progress. It saves quite a bit of time. when you do it that way. So there's a frame like this for every goal. You can keep going, so you'll see each of the goals, and you'll see that there's a frame for each area. There were 5 goals. Then what they decided to do is for every goal, list the measures of progress tools. So these were the tools that they were going to use in order for them to gauge how well they were doing. And I think the last is, there was a discussion with this particular group around what are the implications of implementing this plan. So like, what is it that we need to pay attention to as it relates to implementing this plan? What are some things we need to think about as a result of that? And let's prepare for some of that. And I think that puts us at the end of this plan. So this is this is pretty typical of what you would see in a strategic plan. Of course, every plan it could be, the layout could be different, the way it's formatted could be different, the content information that you include could also be different. So again, that's really up to the nonprofit as to how they want to do that. If we could go back to gallery. And we're going to walk through pretty much all that we just showed in that sample. We're going to walk through that today. We're going to walk through how to build out the plan. We do have one more, and Cecilia provided that plan. So Cecilia, we're going to show your plan, if you don't mind sharing with us here in just a minute how your organization approached it. Again, there are different ways to go about doing that. Go back to gallery for me real quick. Go back to gallery before we do that. Any thoughts that as we were walking you through that example, are any questions coming to mind before we look at this next example? Any questions or any comments there? Yes.
Yeah, I'm just interested to hear, I'm used to them being like a 3-year cycle. Is that typically what happens in nonprofits, or is it very organization specific? Just interested in time frame.
The answer is it is organization specific. What I see more of these days, especially post-COVID, are 3-year plans. I don't necessarily see, it's been a long time since I've done a plan since COVID. Matter of fact, I don't think I've done any that have been beyond 3 years since COVID, since we've had the COVID experience. But it's definitely up to your organization as to how you go about determining your time frame.
Great. And one other question for you or for the group. Do nonprofits typically make these public and put them on their websites, or is it something that's more kept just within the organization?
It varies. What I see most often is, so like that plan you just saw, it's okay to just put that out there. I mean, there's nothing, I don't see any vulnerability in that's fine. But also what I see is taking the plan and maybe developing a single page infographic where it captures the essence of what's in the plan, and then sharing that as opposed to a 15-page plan where all of that may or may not be as relevant to the folks that might be utilizing it. Was there any other questions or thoughts about that particular plan? And again, keep in mind, there are different ways to create and to make available a strategic plan in terms of the end product. The process is pretty much the same, no matter what the plan looks like in the end. Typically, the process is the process you're going to learn about today. Cecilia, are you ready? I think the team is going to put up and thank you for sharing. Thank you
Well, just don't judge me.
No, well, and if you could do this in like, I don't know, 3 minutes, 4 minutes or so. Thank you. Cecilia, I can't hear you if did you
You
mute
want me to
yourself?
explain it?
Well, just to give us an idea of just kind of how did you go about your process, and we'll just roll through what you have here. And team, can we make it a little bit bigger so we can kind of see what's there? Thank you. All
Okay,
right, perfect.
so
Mhm.
the first thing that we did was include our board of directors, but we had a strategic planning 2 days with the staff. And some of our key partners in the community were a domestic violence sexual assault organization. So we brought in the sheriff and Department of Social Services and the hospital, and literally went line by line of what we feel like we are. And was it reachable? So the background of Reach is the background. It probably could be shortened, but it was exciting for the first pioneers that started this. It was a task force. So back in the 70s, and then it ended up being a nonprofit. And so I'm personally very proud of the first to lead us in that. And so the vision is, of course, we want to see a community free of domestic violence and sexual assault, which to me is the mission is leading our community and eliminating. And so that turned our mission from all the way around to prevention. Because if we're going to eliminate, we need to get to our little ones. And so keeping that in mind as we go through, we needed to figure out who we are. We need to figure out our values. So we went through all the values, because Reach can't be anything that its team's not. And so they picked the most important ones to them. And then our marketing and communication plan was how are we going to get the information out there? How are we going to get known in the community for involvement, not just money and donations, but that we are here. And since we're in a rural area, what happens at home stays at home, and how do we change that? And so we had to 360, because really everyone is our target market. Because even if you're not going through domestic violence, you will know someone that is. And so it was easier for us to separate out our targets there to community leaders, the youth, the elderly, and disabled, our domestic violence victims, our sexual assault, our community resources, involve our churches. So how are we going to be everywhere all the time? And so we had to have a plan for that and see what overlapped. And then our goals and objectives. When I first started 10 years ago, we were in a $90,000 deficit. And so that has to be number one. And my dream, which is now everyone's dream, is we need a new shelter. And so how are we going to do that with a $90,000 deficit? And who's going to give money to an organization that already doesn't know how to spend the money, handle that kind of money? And so we had to build trust and literally start justifying everything to our outlets. Community outreach, we are everywhere all the time. So how do we make that happen? Just as a reminder, we did expand. We now cover Cherokee and Graham County. And so that is, our services are in Graham County, but it would, the strategic plan for Graham County is not completed.
Mhm. Let me ask you a question. I noticed, and I know you're getting ready to highlight the people development plan, but the team and I, when we were reviewing your plan, we noticed that there's a marketing and communication plan and there's a people plan built into the strategic plan. Can you, in a soundbite, kind of tell us how that came to be?
So I felt like it was important to include that. I was the Small Business Center Director at Tri-County for many years, and to have it all in one place to read. And again, this is fluid, so it can be changed and is updated regularly. But we just felt like that the details needed to be in our strategic plan as well.
Okay, that's different. I just want the group to recognize that that's a different way of in terms of the layout and the format. I think it makes absolute sense what you're saying. But I did just want to point out that that's different. And then I noticed that I think the last thing that is in here is your SWOT analysis, which we're going to talk about that in the detail in going over the process today. That is a part of the strategic planning process too, is to work with those stakeholders to identify what are the strengths and the weakness and the opportunities and threats as it relates to our organizations. In addition to, you have this unique feature. There was a plan that I did several years ago. They are a community action organization, and they actually have a risk analysis process as a part of their organization. So it was interesting to see that you have this risk component as a part of your SWOT. And then team, if you could keep going to the next, I think that kind of brings us to an end. Great. Thank you, Cecilia. We appreciate that.
Well, are you going to give me feedback through email?
Excuse me?
Are you going to give me feedback through email? What
We can
shouldn't
talk on the
go?
chat. If you want to stay on later, we can. I'd like to do that. But and if we could go back to gallery, Sanji, I see your hand.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Cecilia, like the development plan, and it says people development plan. So I wanted to ask her what led to that, calling it people development plan.
So I like to involve other people that think differently than I do. So we pulled in people that we have to work with every day. And that's also been exposed to our cause in some kind of shape, form, or fashion. And so, and then without the team buy-in, it's pointless. Because I can't do it by myself. So I felt like we do not make decisions that the team has not already bought into the dream or the goal, or and so they work harder, they have more initiative, and even our community, they will call and say, hey, you need to be at this meeting, and make sure that we're involved.
And Cecilia, just to confirm, you are the executive director, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So here is what's so great about, like, I'm jumping out of my seat right now, because it's very apparent that Cecilia, as the executive director, is leading in this process. That is very important, because it is the executive director who leads the implementation. And so I think it's real important that we as executive directors, when we decide that this is a a tool that we're going to develop and create. It is important for the executive director to be working in lockstep with the board to develop the plan. The plan, the ownership of the plan is all of us. It's not just the staff. It's not just the board. It's not just the board chair or just the executive director. And so the way in which she has explained her process, I think, is just what we want to have happen. The other thing is that there is uniqueness in this plan per the executive director, as it should be. She pointed out in both instances, the marketing communication plan, the people plan, that's unique and different and specific to the person who's being charged with leading the organization through the implementation of the plan. That's just essential. It's very important for that to be the case. And I would imagine with the strategic planning committee, the composition of that committee also is reflective of who is interacting and interfacing with this nonprofit. So Cecilia, thank you again for allowing us to review and talk about and learn more about what you all are doing as it relates to your strategic plan and how you went about that process. So that's, again, that is very, very important. It is a joint effort. It is a team effort for us to develop a strategic plan. And it is the executive director that is a key resource to developing and implementing the plan. The Greater High Point Food Alliance, that plan, Carl Vierling was the executive director. He's since retired, but he was the executive director back in 2022 when they developed that plan. It was a 3-year plan. It ends this year. And it was the same in that scenario as well. He was very involved in the process and working with his board and working with his staff and making sure that everyone understood what was happening and their role in it. That just makes for a much more fruitful implementation of the plan down the road. So I do want to lift that up and thank you all thank you, Cecilia, again for sharing that. Team, do we want to reference the poll? So we did a LinkedIn poll. Rebecca, do you want to share with us what we have there?
Sure. We had some impressions, but nobody responded in the comments.
Okay.
So the question
All right.
was just to reiterate in preparation for this week's session, in your opinion, how often or what cadence should an organization review and update its strategic plan? How often should they update?
Are we going to have them
As
answer it in the
often-
chat?
I
Or-
think so. Yeah. Let's see what people think.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Why don't we
that's
do
good.
that?
Go for it.
Yes.
All right.
So the question is, in your opinion, how often, what cadence should an organization review and update its strategic plan?
We see annually, we see every
Mhm.
3 years,
Mhm.
annually, every 2, 3. Update we do a 3-year, but we update every year. Okay.
Mhm.
3 annually, 3.
You know, an update can happen as often as needed, right? So, you know, a full review, right? And update annually makes sense. But things do happen. And sometimes we have to go in and modify and pivot and, you know, bring about changes to our plans based on, I'm going to go back to, who was it that said this? Let me go back to my notes a few minutes ago. It was Leslie. Was it Leslie? No, Sanji, that said the conditions. Sometimes it's the conditions that move us to make adjustments in our plan. And so it's important for us to keep that in mind. Annually is a good mark, you know, to say this is how we progress. These are the things that we're being challenged by, et cetera, et cetera. So, but we definitely need to have it out front, and it needs to be in front of us. So that's good. Every organization is different and we all approach this differently, but it is good to have for those of you who are board members, it's good for your executive director, your CEO, to have something to guide the work so that when we as board members come up with a bright idea that we want the organization to pursue or something we want the organization to do, it helps us all kind of stay in alignment with what the focus is, as opposed to maybe adding on some things that may not necessarily align with our plan. Lisa, I see you're unmuted. Was there something you wanted to?
Mm-mm.
No,
No,
you're
you're
good.
good.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, perfect. All right. We're going to take a break here in a minute, but before we do that, I want to point out to you what you have in your workbook. So strategic planning is our topic for today. And if you go in your workbook to page 57, that's where the section starts, page 57. And thank you, Rebecca, for popping this up on the screen. These are all the pieces up to the puzzle here. And we begin with thinking about kind of starting up the strategic planning process. The pages in your workbook run from page 57 to 100, 57 to 100. And we have on this screen, if you have your phone, you can take a quick picture. Notice we've got the page numbers kind of there for you. So you can match up where we are in the work that we're doing with the page numbers in your work. So we are going to be doing some breakouts. We're going to be doing some hands-on work as it relates to each of these components of the process. If you would turn in your workbook with me, literally, I have my workbook here and I am flipping through the pages. So I just want you to see what it is that you have and what we're going to be working with. So on page 57, we've got the definition of strategic planning. We've got a real quick little quiz that we're going to do. That's page 58. We've got an info page on page 59 that just gives us some insight as to the startup of the planning process. When you get to page 60, we've got the 8 steps of the process. This is typically what happens in most strategic planning processes. So there's that. Page 61, a little bit more information about setting up a committee to do the planning. And then page 62, how are we actually going to go about doing this walking through this process? So we've got some choices there. Page 63, getting ready to plan. Getting ready to plan. That's something that we'll incorporate in our session today, our readiness to do strategic planning. Page 65, who's involved. Page 66, strategic planning decisions that we have to make. And page 67, what is this work plan going to look like? What are we doing? How are we going to go about doing the work of it that it takes to complete the process? So the work plan for the process. 68, page 68 to 81, that's all about needs assessment. All about needs assessment. Page 80, let me see, what was that? 68 to 81 is needs assessment. 82 to page, and some of what's in the needs assessment component is also relevant for asset mapping. So 68 to 81 is needs assessment, 82 to 83 is asset mapping. We're going to revisit what capacity is and what capacity assessment is. That's also a part of the process. So as you're taking your notes, needs assessment, asset mapping, capacity assessment helps us with context. It helps us with understanding that external environment for needs assessment and asset mapping, and our internal environment for capacity assessment. So those are three things that we're gonna go over. Revisiting our mission statement, revisiting our vision statement. It's a good time to do that. That's page 85, 86. When we get to goal setting and objectives, and notice we have this highlighted in blue. This was one of the items when you did the capacity assessment as a cohort, as a group. This was one of the areas that received the most notations around this is what you want to work on for the next year as it relates to strategic planning. So we highlighted that in blue. Page 87 to page 92. We're going to actually practice writing the goals, writing the action steps, and writing an outcome statement. When you get to page 91, that's a worksheet. You might want to pull a little sticky or post it there on page 91, because we're going to come back to this and we're going to actually fill this in. We're going to practice writing that. We've got some more resources on page 92. And then on page 93 to 95 is the SWOT analysis. So we're going to walk through, we're going to practice doing that. So that's going to be hands-on. When you get to page 96, we are going to notice in the plan that Cecilia shared and the plan that I shared, there typically is a place in the plan for every goal. When you look at page 96, there's a place in the plan for every goal that tells us what the goal is, what the outcome is, how are we going to do it, who's doing what, and when. So we're going to fill that in as a part of this. And on page 97 is the blank worksheet. 96 is filled in, 97, it is blank. So we're going to work with that. Implementing the plan, writing it and implementing it. That is page 98 through 99, monitoring and tracking it. And then you get to page 100 and whoop, we're at the end. So that is the entire section on strategic planning. And we always kind of walk us through what is actually in your workbook, so you know what it is that we're working through as it relates to our work today. Think about the purpose of a plan. It's a guide, it's a tool. It keeps everyone on the same page. If your organization aligns with equity, diversity, inclusion principles, this is also in the process. You might want to be thinking about how you include that or how you want to incorporate that in the planning process. So that's important as it relates to that. Again, on your screen, you see these are the different pieces that we're going to work on today. We're going to put emphasis on goal writing, writing action steps, writing outcomes, building out those pieces of information in a plan, and then a SWOT analysis that goes along with that. So that's going to be the majority of our hands-on work today. Team, if we could go back to the gallery view. Are you tired yet? That felt like the whole session for the day, didn't it? Well, we're gonna break it up. We're gonna break this down. Lisa, you want to get them ready? I don't want to overwhelm people.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot, but I think we'll be all right.
Good.
We'll be all right.
Here's the good news. The good news is the team, we've done this before. So we know, we know exactly how to
How you feeling?
facilitate this in a way that you walk away with some skill building, with maybe some clarity, and also maybe you're able to see what we want you to see, which is the full process and what that looks like. And how does your role fit into that process, right? How does your role with the nonprofit, how does it fit into the process? And so hopefully we will accomplish our goal when we get to the end of our session today. Everybody with me? Give me some reaction. You know, I like to know if I don't leave anybody behind we're moving through this journey together. No one is left behind. Absolutely no one.
Looks good, looks good.
Great, 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 great. All right. So we are gonna take a break, and then we're gonna get back to work once that break is over. It's 10:34, 10:44, 10 minutes.
Mhm.
Rebecca, does that sound good? Okay.
Yep.
So 10:44, we're gonna get back to work, or we're gonna get started with this list of items. Welcome back. So where we're gonna pick up is we're gonna pick up in your workbook. I want us to go to page 2. Let's go to page 2. And just to kind of kick off our work, I want us to think about kind of truth or myth, what strategic planning is versus what it is not. And so we'll spend a little time here. Some of what we have in this particular part of our work is will be covered as we move along, but also some of the pieces in this section we've covered already. So it'll be kind of like a revisiting of the startup. Team, can we go to the startup slide? Just because we have such a laundry list, like a long laundry list of what it is that we're working on. So here is what we're going to focus on in this segment. The strategic planning definition is on page 57. We've kind of captured that. We're going to do the truth and myth worksheet, try to answer any of your questions you might have about the process, creating a committee, and then also choices. Now, there are handouts for each of these sections. You should be on page 58. That's where we're going next. But the total number of pages in this section is page 57 through, just want to make sure we get this right. You want to look at page 57 through 62. That's what we're looking at right now. And I am going to encourage us to continue to let me know that, if you're not with us, because I want to make sure we're all together. Okay, the truth and myth worksheet. Go to page 58 for me. We're going to focus on these 5 aspects of strategic planning. We can go back to the gallery for now. And let's take a couple of minutes to complete items 1 through 7. Please indicate whether you believe the statement is true or myth. Page 58. So again, keep in mind that strategic planning is it's an endeavor or task that we kind of work together, and we determine what our focus is going to be, and over a specific period of time in terms of our work. Who we are, what we do, and why we do it. Who we are, what we do, and why we do it. Strategic planning. Who we are, what we do, and how we do it. Okay, all right. Let's get started. Page 58 is where we are. So in terms of truth or myth, and use your, put your response in the chat. Strategic planning is systematic in that it calls for following a process that is both structured and data-based. Just put in a chat. All right, all right, all right. We got it. T for truth. It is a process. We've talked about that already. That was a given, right? I had already given you the answer kind of to that one. And it is a structured process, and we are informed by needs assessment data, asset mapping data, capacity assessment data, feedback from our stakeholders. We are informed by that. Number 2, strategic planning is a substitute for the exercise of judgment by leadership. Truth or myth? Truth or myth? It's a substitute for the exercise of judgment by leadership. Myth, myth, myth. I think, Lisa, that's what I see. That's
Yep.
what I see in there.
Yep.
Yes. All right. So yes, that's a myth. It doesn't, the strategic plan in and of itself doesn't get the work done, and it doesn't do the work. We have to operationalize the plan. So it's not a substitute for, as we implement the plan, we've got to make judgment calls on how to move, how to make changes, how to adjust as we move along. And leadership is important. Cecilia is a really good example of the executive director as a part of the leadership of your nonprofit. It's important for them to be a part of that. And Lisa, jump in anywhere if you have any thoughts as we're working through this.
Yep.
Just jump right in with your experience.
Yep.
Number 3, strategic planning is a smooth, predictable, linear process. Truth or myth? Looks like popcorn in the chat.
Yeah.
So
Got
yes.
Miss. Yep.
Yes, it is. It is. While we have a process that guides us, there are some things that happen that we probably will not have predicted. So we have to be able to work through that. Number 4, strategic planning guides the acquisition and allocation of resources. Truth or myth? There's the popcorn.
Mm-hmm. Everybody's on track.
That is true. Allocation of resources, people resources, financial resources. When we look at our strategic plan, we should be thinking about a budget over those 3 years. What will the budget need to be so that we can accomplish these things that we've laid out over the 3-year period of time, or however long your plan is? The strategic planning process is about building commitment. Is that true, or is that a myth? Building commitment. What's going on in the popcorn pop? Truth. This is what we hope would happen. As a part of going through the process, we hope that the commitment and buy-in of all of us takes place, because we've been a part of that process. And so, yes, we want commitment to grow. We're also learning, and we're developing our skills, and we're developing more knowledge about the nonprofit as a whole. There are things that we learned that we didn't know when we're going through the process, because you're looking at the history. You're looking at what we're doing now. We're trying to determine where to go for the future. And so that's important to keep in mind. We want that commitment to evolve and grow. Strategic planning predicts the future. Myth or truth? It predicts the future. Keep in mind, it's not the plan itself is just a document until we operationalize it. That
Think
is
about it
myth.
like a GPS, Dr. Palmer.
Yes,
It
yes.
tells you where to go like a roadmap.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so it doesn't make predictions,
Right.
but it can inform us as to what we might anticipate particularly if you remember from the Greater High Point Food Alliance plan, they had a section titled Future Implication, the implementation of that plan and implications of that. So that's important. And then lastly, strategic planning involves choosing specific priorities. Yes, 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 yes. So that is very true. Very true. Keep walking with me through your workbook. Page 59. We've talked about all of these attributes of the strategic planning process. It can be costly. It does take time. It can be an effective tool in keeping us on track. It is important. Not all nonprofits decide that they're going to utilize this particular tool, but it is one that we promote and encourage nonprofits to engage in. We become more knowledgeable. We develop our skills. It should be an interactive, participatory, engaging process. Now, what I will say is that when you're starting from scratch and you've never completed a strategic plan or developed one before, that experience is different than when you have an existing plan as a springboard. When you have an existing plan, you're not completely starting from scratch. So you have to determine how you want to walk through the process when you have an existing plan. Page 60, we've already covered that. That was the whole list that was on the screen. Page 61, developing a committee. Developing a committee. You decide as the nonprofit the composition of your strategic planning committee. These are all individuals or roles that you might want to have as a part of your committee. But keep in mind, it should align with the work of your nonprofit. So each of us that serve on your committee, we should be there for a purpose. That purpose should be to provide feedback as it relates to what we bring to the table. And so keep that in mind. If you have paid staff, and if you have an executive director that's on staff, or a volunteer, sometimes executive directors volunteer their time, especially if they're the founder. It is important for that individual to be a part of that committee. It is important for that individual to be a part of that committee. Page 62 is one of my favorite handouts. It's a quick reference for you. Here are some choices that you will have to make as you move forward in facilitating this process. So what stakeholder groups are you going to involve? How much time do you have to develop your plan? Are you going to have a committee? And what will the role of that committee be? Who's going to kind of lead the process? I think it's a good balance if you have the executive director and the board chair. If you're not able to have those two kind of working together, maybe another role on the executive committee. Remember, we talked about board governance 2 topics ago. This is where having that infrastructure of your board, here's where that comes into play. So you might tap one of your executive committee members to be on that to help provide leadership. Who's going to physically write the plan? Who's going to physically write the plan? Are you going to have someone from your staff, help to do the layout and put the words on the page? That happens. Or are you going to hire out a consultant to do all of this for you? Recognize that typically in the process, we have staff retreats, we have board retreats. Sometimes we have staff and board together. It just depends on how you want that to happen. But we do typically have kind of a board retreat style gathering work session where we're participating in that process. And again, you have to decide what resources you have available as it relates to that. Questions about those pieces? Okay, we're going to keep moving. We're going to go into the next component. the next component, team, if you could just pop up that slide for me. This is preparing to plan. All right. Why plan? Is your organization ready? Involvement and commitment. Who should be involved? What documents might be helpful? We're going to revisit that choices and decisions handout that you just saw, and then the actual work plan, because we're going to do some hands-on, really crafting some pieces of the plan. So page 63. Page 63 in your workbook. And team, you can leave the slide up here as I walk through this. You can leave this here. So is your organization ready to plan? So it might be that we really want to engage in a strategic planning process, but I would encourage you to do like a quick assess of whether or not your organization is ready. And so we have this quick quiz for you. You're going to indicate your response with a 1, 2, or 3. You're going to score your organization as it relates to each of the statements listed here on page 63. So the where a statement has 2 parts, and you would answer definitely to one part, but not another, then go with the weaker response. So that's a little footnote there. So if the statement has 2 parts to it, and you would answer definitely to one part of it, but not the other, go with the weaker response. The first one is the organization has a clear vision of what it wants to achieve, and there is consensus around the vision. Is that 1 for your organization, or 2, or 3? And so I'm going to go quiet here and let you complete. Is your organization ready to plan? Is your organization ready to plan? Take another minute or so to complete. Is your organization ready to plan? Is your organization ready to plan? All right. So look at the score sheet. So you would add up your score, add up all the scoring that you did, the rating that you did. And then on page 64 is the key. So your level of readiness. If you add up your total and you have a 20 or more, your organization is ready for the process. If it's 14 or less, there's no urgency, but your organization should at least do strategic planning 3 years after your last strategic planning process. But you also, if you're 14 or less, also think about, how do we get ready? That's something to think about. So if you're you're 15 and above, looks like you're ready. Show us your scores in the chat. And team, if we could go back to gallery view, please. What are your scores in the chat? How ready are we? Are we having fun yet? Yes, we're having fun.
Got a good range of answers here.
Yes, 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 yes. All right. Now, as we go through this process and we're having you utilize these tools, consider how you might use these tools with your organization as you're trying to kind of manage and facilitate this process. And for those of you who have some experience with this, these may be some tools that you could also use as a way to as a resource to incorporate in the process. Page 65. So now we know we're going to say, Lisa, that we all got a 20 or more just for the purpose of the exercise, right? So we're going to move forward and we're going to learn about how to do this. On page 65, we've already covered. So we've already covered who should be involved. That goes with page 62. It kind of aligns with that on page 62. Particularly when you look at page 62 and you look at the item, who will lead, who will be a part, you know, who will create, who will be a part of the external, internal folks that are involved. All of that goes with page 62, page 65. And page 66, it's a repeat. It's a repeat. We just put it in a singular list. It's a repeat of page 62. So here we are again, we are preparing to plan. We are preparing to plan. Page 67. We provide this for you as a worksheet to just help you to identify the way in which you want to approach this. You have about 20 different items listed. Those are all the activities or the steps. What kind of process are you going to use to make sure those steps occur? And then who's responsible for that, meaning the entire process. So page 67 aligns with all of those steps in the process. So this is a handout worksheet for you to craft that or to chart that. Needs assessment and asset mapping is where we're going next. Needs assessment and asset mapping. Everybody with me? We're going to do some hands-on work here in just a minute. Everybody together? Okay, good. We're not leaving anybody behind. Rebecca, I'm going to come back to the useful document checklist. And so I'm going to come back to that. So on page 68, and it actually runs all the way through page through page 81. It runs all the way through. This is all about how to conduct a needs assessment. We don't train on how to facilitate and implement a needs assessment process. That's not what we do in this exercise. But what we do is we point out to you on page 68, we point out to you the usefulness of a needs assessment in terms of your mission and your vision of your nonprofit. And so Cecilia shared with us that the focus of her organization is related to domestic violence. With the Greater High Point Food Alliance, it's related to food insecurity. So what we want to better understand is the need to address food insecurity, domestic violence in the community. And so what we do is we look at secondary reports. So there may be a pre-existing report that your local city government does or your county government does. Most of that reporting is available. And so you can better understand the need for your organization to continue to offer the programs and services that you offer, and that your organization adds value to your community by helping address the need. So the concept of doing a needs assessment is for that purpose. And so we give you the purpose of a needs assessment on page 68. What we also do is we show the kinds of questions you would be asking your stakeholders if you decide that you want to incorporate a needs assessment in the process. But that is a multi-step process in and of itself. So you want to build in your timeline if in fact you need to do a needs assessment in your community. And so what you see on pages 68 through 81 captures how you would go about doing a needs assessment. We don't train on how to do a needs assessment in this experience. What we do is help you to understand how a needs assessment informs the strategic planning process. And you can borrow from other needs assessments that's related to your mission. You can borrow from those as reports that have been conducted in your community. Page 82, asset mapping. We don't train on how to do asset mapping. What we do is we help you to understand how asset mapping informs your strategic planning process. And so what happens with asset mapping is it helps us to identify the assets in our community that would be helpful to implement our plan, and that would be helpful for us to even in the development part of our plan. So the purpose of a needs assessment, the purpose of asset mapping is to inform that. And so you have pages 82 and 83, well, 82 through 84. I'm sorry, 82 through 83 is in your workbook, and that helps to inform the strategic planning process. Needs assessment, asset mapping. Needs assessment, asset mapping. Are we all together? So those are two. Some nonprofits don't do in its entirety. They don't facilitate either of the two, but it's relevant when you start inquiring with your stakeholder groups. You're learning about need. You're learning about assets. That's what you're doing when you're querying them. That information is shared in that process. We've already covered page 84, capacity assessment. Same principle applies here. It is important for us to understand and know the current capacity of our nonprofit going into the strategic planning process, because we don't want to include goals and objectives and outcomes that we don't have the capacity to implement. And so we want to make sure that we understand that the results of your capacity assessment will help to inform to what degree we're able to engage in the strategic planning process. We all together? Another piece of information that's helpful. Most nonprofits have documents that exist already. You don't have to go out and create this information to help you determine need, assets, and capacity. You already have it. You just need to reference it as a prep going into the strategic planning process to give you a context, to give you background on your nonprofit organization. So needs assessment, assets, capacity of your organization. And the team is going to show you what these documents are. They're going to show you on the screen, and they're going to put this in the chat for you as well. This is not in your workbook. This is not in your workbook. And I'm going to pause there while you catch your breath and I catch my breath too. We're gonna do some hands-on work here in just a minute. Useful documents. Again, you typically have this information in your possession already. That is correct. We're talking about your current capacity going into the strategic planning process. Thank you, Rebecca. I appreciate your help here. Increase the size for us just a little bit. Okay, these are documents that you already have in your possession. So keep in mind, we're talking about needs, we're talking about assets, we're talking about current capacity. And so this is information that most nonprofits already have in some way, shape, or form. So you have what we call mission-related documents. Your mission, your vision, value statements, principles, annual reports, impact reports, descriptions of your programs and services, any prior needs assessments that you've conducted, surveys from your participants, or information that helps us to know the feedback of your clients, any evaluation information related to your programs or your organization, the reputation of your organization in the community. And then there are other like governmental reports that can inform and align with your mission. Financial documents, this list kind of speaks for itself. This is all information that can help inform us about what we need to focus on in the future. You can scroll up. Administrative capacity documents. Here we're talking about any type of like your org chart, or how does the staffing of your organization, any kind of volunteer program you have, databases, information in databases, your location, your physical location and infrastructure. All of this is information that helps us better understand capacity. And then your board of directors documents, your bylaws, your minutes, your all of this type of information, any evaluations that your board has conducted in terms of its performance. All of those things are relevant here. So again, we put this link in the chat for you so you can access and have it in your toolbox. But you already, most of us have this type of information that can inform us about need, that can inform us about our assets, and that can inform us about our current level of capacity as a nonprofit. Again, here we are taking a look at the backdrop or the background or the context in which we're trying to develop this plan. Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. You can go to, in just a minute, you can go to the mission and the vision, but I do want to do a check-in before we do that. Do want to do a check-in. Everybody good? Okay. So how are we feeling right now? Whew. How are we feeling? Out of what we've discussed so far, Lisa, I want to hear from the group. What is the most useful to you based on what we've covered up to this point? What's the most useful? You can unmute or you can write it in the chat, and I'm gonna let Lisa kind of garner what you all have to say back to us, because we're gonna keep going. We're gonna take a break, but we're gonna keep going.
Page 62.
I saw that, page
Tanya, you want to
62.
elaborate about
Most
Oh,
useful.
she's telling us what's useful. Okay.
Yeah.
I get it.
Mm-hmm. Most useful. Great. That's one of my favorites too. I like that. I like that handout.
Planning. Getting a broader perspective on what's needed. Page 63,
Okay.
which is, are you ready to plan?
Mm-hmm. Great.
I think
I like the fact
page
that it's
six-
diverse,
Go ahead,
right?
Lon.
It's kind of
Mhm.
diverse of what's most useful to everyone.
No. Go ahead,
so
Ms.
far.
Parker. Sorry, we didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, you're fine. I think page 63 was definitely helpful to see if we're ready for the process. So that was very enlightening.
Mm-hmm. Page 62. So those are your popular pages. Yep.
Good, 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 good. Excellent, excellent, excellent. It's important to us that we're providing you with resources that's useful to you in order for you to facilitate this
Yeah.
process yourself.
And I think it's
Thank
really important if you're starting out, any new executive directors who are those ground EDs that are just starting out a nonprofit or building a nonprofit, please document and label where things are put. Because I think this is the hardest thing to find documents as the years pass, people move, you might move locations, but just, or if it's electronic, just make sure people have a way to find things as your staff get staff, turnover staff. I think that's one of the most, because you need all that history, like Dr. Palmer talked about, to get started.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Everybody with me? We're moving right along. Team, if we could go to the mission and vision slide. So another aspect of the strategic planning process is to confirm the vision and to confirm the mission. So who we are, what we do, what we value. And so some nonprofits will make adjustments to their mission and or vision statements. And might I say, the way in which we're going to do our work, some nonprofits will make those adjustments in this process. So it's a good place to focus on as to whether or not our mission and our vision continues to be what we want and need it to be. So that's very, very important. The mission and the vision, the mission and the vision. Again, sometimes we are left to make some adjustments and make changes. The North Carolina Center for Nonprofits did a revision of its mission back in 2022. And so it's not uncommon to make that change or switch. What I would put in your note, add to your notes though, if you decide that you're going to rework your mission and vision, if you decide you're going to do that, add time to your timeline to complete the strategic planning process, because that in and of itself is a project to really, really make those changes. I don't know, team, do you all want to comment on how we modified the mission and vision for the center?
I think our process, when we went through the same similar process as you just went through with the class. And I think when we decided we wanted to make our vision, mission, values more equitable and inclusive. So as you read this, we don't have an old version to show you versus the new version, but the new version is, we felt as a team, because this was a whole process again with the board. First it was the staff, the board, then we all came together. I think we might have revised and edited, gosh, I don't know, lots of times to get to some consensus. But anyway, we just wanted to be, our purpose was to make it more equitable and inclusive. That was our reasoning behind editing and updating our vision, mission, values, as you can see as Rebecca scrolls up. And we also included an equity statement that had not been there before to make that forward facing as well. That's a short but sweet explanation, Dr. Palmer.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And if you want to read this out, it's on our website, so it's easily accessible if we went too fast. Yeah.
But the main thing here is that the strategic planning process incorporates this opportunity for you to revisit. So that's important to remember. The next thing we're going to work on is goal setting and objectives. So we're going to practice writing a goal statement, action steps, and an outcome. So we're going to practice doing that. So I'm going to demonstrate and walk us through an exercise to show us how to do that. Then we're going to go into a breakout. You're going to go into a breakout space, and you're going to work with your colleagues to practice writing these parts of the plan. So, yeah, you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So the heart of the strategic plan are the goals, the action steps, and the outcomes. And so we're going to practice how to craft each one of these. But before we do that, we're going to take a break. It's going to be a 5-minute break. It's 11:25. We're going to come back at 11:30, and we're going to put to practice all that we've learned in the past hour and, oh no, 2 hours. The last 2 hours. We're going to put to practice what we've learned. Okay. All right. We can go back to gallery. And when you get back from your break, we're going to go right into doing some breakout work. We are pursuing the goal overall. So again, the goals are what we're going to do in our plan. If you remember from, Cecilia, remind me your organization, what is it called? REACH? I just want to make sure I'm getting it right. I think it's REACH.
Yes, reach.
So REACH had a list of goals, a set of goals they were trying to accomplish, and so did the Greater High Point Food Alliance. And so for each of the goals, remember, there was a section in the plan where it was the goals, it was the objectives or action steps. Sometimes the action steps and objectives terminology is used interchangeably, and then the outcomes for each one of those. So it's like a family of information is how I like to describe it. What, how, why. And typically you'll see that on a page. The other thing you want to make a note of is oftentimes the goals are going to lean more towards programs, or they're going to lean more towards the organization as a whole. It's very common to see a specific goal in a plan that's related to program development and management. Remember that topic we covered last week? Well, oftentimes in a strategic plan, there is a goal where in the plan that emphasizes and lays out the work that we're going to do over a certain amount of time. If you notice, the other goals in a plan are related to the organization as a whole. So what we did is we crafted 2 examples for you. And so the team is going to show those 2 examples, and we're going to put those examples in the chat. So I want you to, that's coming up in a minute. Hold on, Rebecca, before you go there. So, but I do want you to understand that there are 2 different, there's 2 different ways in which, or reasons that we put goals in the plan. If you turn to page 88 in your book, there is a sample goal written for you. There's an example on page 88. There's the goal statement. So there's an example. If you turn to page 89, there are examples of action steps that align with that goal. And if you turn to page 90, there is a sample outcome statement that aligns with the goal and the action steps. So it's one family of information, And what you're going to do in your breakouts is you're going to work together to practice writing a goal statement, action steps, and an outcome with that, an outcome statement with that. And so you're going to practice doing that. On page 91 is your worksheet. Okay, so we're adding 2. If you go back to page 88, 88 is the sample goal statement. 89 is a sample list of action steps or an example. And then page 90 is the outcome statement that goes along with the goal and the action steps. So in our goal statement, we said that we wanted to make sure that our goal statement, if you go back to page 87, our goal statement was very specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. Some would call that a SMART goal. That's what some would call that. And then our action steps again is how we're going to complete, how we're going to get to achieving the goal and seeing the outcome come to fruition. And then the outcome is very specific to what is going to be the evidence of achieving that goal and what is going to be the evidence of those action steps having been completed. So again, typically, there's probably about a half a dozen or so goals. And I don't want that to sound prescriptive, because it's as many goals as your nonprofit decides that it wants to include. So I don't want to sound prescriptive there, but typically I see 6, 7, 8 goals is typically what I see. Most of your goals are about the organization as a whole. And then typically there's a goal that's related to programs and services and how you're going to approach programs and services. So that's important. The other thing too is that your goal statement, your action steps, and your outcome statement, oftentimes it starts and begins with the action word. It starts and begins with action words. And so this is but this is how we frame all 3 sets of information. On page 92, there's a list of action words that you can use, like a little glossary, or to kind of help you to begin to craft what your information is going to look like. What your information is gonna look like. Okay, so important. So the first thing we would like for you to do is to begin thinking about a goal that you would incorporate in a strategic plan for your agency. A goal that you would incorporate in a strategic plan for your agency. The example we gave is for the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits. That was the example that we gave in your workbook. We said that we were going to create a resource, a community-based capacity building resource. We said we're going to create that. That's page 88. That's our what. Then we talked about how we were going to go about doing it. That's page 89. And then on page 90, we said, once that capacity building resource is completed, we would have a model and we would have a permanent resource. So again, that's the example that we've provided for you here. So I want you to think about a goal that you would incorporate in your organization, for your organization in a strategic plan. And I want you to use page 91, the worksheet, to fill that in. Okay? So I want you to begin to practice that. Practice writing a goal. So think of a goal that you would complete, that you would incorporate in a strategic plan for your agency.
And they're doing this in breakout rooms, right, Dr. Palmer?
The first part is in the gallery. We
Oh,
go into
okay. All right.
breakouts in a minute. That's
Okay.
not right this second. Yep. Is it Jeopardy music? I don't have any Jeopardy music, but
I'm ready. Do, 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 do,
thank you,
do,
Lisa.
do.
Thank you.
No, this is Tiffany.
Oh, Tiffany, I'm sorry. I thought that was Lisa. Lisa, I thought that was you.
Remember, that's my
Thank
favorite
you.
game.
Good, good, good. So I'm gonna go silent while you work on your individual example. So you're identifying a goal that you would incorporate in a strategic plan for your agency.
Dr. Palmer,
Yes, uh-huh.
this is Cecilia. Are they recommended topics for strategic goals for nonprofits? Like areas that you want to make sure that you focus on?
I would say no. What happens is the goals and the strategic focus areas should emerge out of getting feedback from your stakeholders. So you create your strategic planning committee. Your strategic planning committee has some dialogue maybe about what you think you should focus on. Then you query your stakeholders to determine whether or not they think the same, right? And then when you do your retreats and your work sessions with your staff and your board, it all comes together, and what emerges out of that becomes those focus areas.
So it doesn't always have to be a financial goal.
It doesn't always have to be, but what I will tell you is that typically what I see is finance and fundraising, or some combination, and programs. I typically see both of those as goal areas in plans. Doesn't have to be, but typically that's what I see.
Thank you.
All right, everybody got their worksheet filled in? Yes, 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 yes. Yes, we all have our worksheets filled in. Okay. So we should have a goal statement, we should have action steps, and we should have an outcome statement. The what, the how, the why. And again, we're practicing here, and we gave you the example in your workbook. So what we're going to do is you're going to go into breakouts. You're going to share your goal and why you decided to focus on this goal. And then you're going to agree on one of the the ones that's shared. You're going to agree on which one you're going to share when you come back to the main room. Easy enough? So you're going to share, you're not going to share your action steps. We'll be here all day if you share your action steps. But what you are going to share is your what and your why. That's what you're going to share in your breakout. Thank you, Rebecca. You're going to put them in breakout rooms. Thanks.
All right, and that's 10 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We'll open up
That
the
is correct.
rooms. We'll see you back
Dr.
here
Power,
in
I
10
had one clarification. Just want to make sure I understand. This is Sanji. So if I have a goal which says diversify organizational funding, that's too broad a goal, right? So within that, if I break that goal down, do those become action steps, or are those some, like, if I say diversification of funding, it could be, first you create a funding plan or resource development plan, develop funding strategies. Are those action steps, or are those goal
It,
statements?
it could be, you determine. So you're the author. You're the author of what goes in your plan. And so, yes, you can have a goal where you're trying to diversify your portfolio of where your dollars come
Yeah.
from. Yes, you can have that. And you can also have accompanying action steps to that, if that's what you choose to do.
Okay. Okay. And then the outcome statements would be the why you said, which
That's correct.
basically, I mean, I'm just trying to figure out the example of an action. Outcome statement could be, that's where I'm kind of getting confused.
So if you have
between-
a goal or a goal or an objective that you're going to put in, an outcome should show something that changed. What changed as
Okay.
in relation to your goal?
Okay.
So
Okay.
does that
Okay.
help?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it. Thank you. Okay.
Mhm.
Bye.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back, welcome back. We're moving right along. So hopefully you had an opportunity. Wait for everyone to return. Welcome back. Welcome back. I think we're all back. Great.
Yep.
So hopefully you were able to get a little bit more acquainted with your colleagues, but also able to hear what some of the focal points would be in a strategic plan for you. And so I'd like to hear from two of the groups. And so if you could just tell us the goal, the name of the organization, the goal and the outcome, leave out the action steps. So just give us your what and your why. Two groups.
I'll go. So the goal was, well, the organization is Durham's Partnership for Children, but the pre-K division of our organization, and my goal was completing 85% of new applications by May 1st. And our why is ensuring that families know their placements of their children in a timely fashion and before school starts, so they are able to visit the school that their child is going to and ask any questions to the teacher and director, so they can make an informed decision.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you
You're
for
welcome.
sharing. Another group. The name of your organization, your what and your why.
I will go. I'm representing Digital Bridges Foresight. This is a program under WinstonNet, and I put our goal will be to host 4-hour basic skills classes across Winston-Salem to help reduce the digital divide by December the 30th, 2025. And our outcome, we will reduce the digital divide throughout Winston-Salem by 10% to assist with basic computer skills training, virtual health training, as well as job training and overall performance.
Thank you, Kwamina, right?
Yes.
Did I pronounce that right? Great, thank you. Thank you both for sharing. And again, keep in mind, per the question that was posed before the break, quite often what we see a goal in a strategic plan for a nonprofit that is related to fundraising and or finances, or in a combination or separately. And we also very commonly see goal related to programs or related to the services that we actually deliver. So once we have whatever that grouping of goals are going to be, we do what we call a SWOT. So for that entire family of information, we analyze that to determine what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses, what are our opportunities, and what are our threats. Okay, so go all the way over to page 95. We have a worksheet for you there. And so what we're doing is we are determining a SWOT, or we're conducting a SWOT analysis on what Christian just shared. We're conducting a SWOT analysis on what Kwamina just shared. So if you had 7 goals or you had 10 goals accompanied with action steps and an outcome statement, you would do a SWOT for each one of those. Because what we want to learn is we want to learn and understand the context in which we're trying to accomplish the what, the how, and the why. So what are our strengths? What do we have working for us? What are our weaknesses? What are our opportunities? What are our threats? And so if you look at page 94, we've given you some examples. And we want you to complete the worksheet on page 95 for that goal and those action steps and that outcome that you practiced. So we're connecting the information. We're connecting the knowledge, if you will. So you've got a goal, you've got action steps, you have an outcome, one family of information. Now you're going to conduct a SWOT analysis of that information. You're going to identify any attributes that your organization has that will be helpful to achieving all of that. You're going to identify any weaknesses that might be harmful or barriers to achieving all of that. You're going to identify if there are any opportunities that your organization might be able to benefit from. And then if there are any external conditions that might be a threat, that might be harmful to you achieving the what, the how, and the why. Okay? So I'm going to go silent while you complete your worksheet for that one family of information that you develop. hopefully you're able to conceptualize the analytical part of this step, because it's real important for us to adopt in the plan realistic goals and outcomes. It's very important for us to adopt realistic goals and outcomes. And when you're doing the analysis, when you're doing the SWOT analysis, in essence, you are borrowing from the needs assessment, the asset mapping, the capacity assessment, all of that information that you've learned about your organization leading up to this step helps to inform what you determine or identify as strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And that's why I highly encourage organizations not to skip those steps, because a lot of times we want to jump right to, well, these are our goals and this is what we need to do. And, you know, as if we know that for sure. We may, anecdotally, we might think we have an idea, but of what those goals are, but when we start speaking and interacting with our stakeholders, or we start studying the needs assessment information and the asset information, it should inform what shows up in the SWOT. If we've not conducted that and we're not aware of what that information is, then we risk being kind of off point with what it is that needs to be in the plan. So just keep in mind that this is an analytical component of the process. And it does take time, I know. It takes time, but oftentimes, if you can garner what your stakeholders and what you as an organization have identified as where you're headed or where you think you're headed, when you get into that retreat with your staff and or your board, they can help you to further analyze that and to kind of do a little bit more kind of a review of that. So keep that in mind in that regard. If you go to page 96, so you should have your information for your SWOT. You should have your information for your SWOT. And we also quite often will incorporate a section in the strategic plan that provides a narrative for what may have emerged as being what those are overall. If you look at page 96, we're putting it all together. That's what we're doing on page 96. So if you, so this is an example. All the information that you just created in your exercise, you should have a goal statement, you should have an outcome statement, and you should have action steps. What you would be adding with your team or with your board or with your organization is who's responsible and when will be the completion date for those items. Here's something to make a note of for the who and the when. It may be that your who and when is determined based on the goal, right? Like the overarching goal. Or it may be that your who and when is based on the outcome. Like who do we want to be involved and when do we want to have that outcome achieved? Or it may be that it's each of the action steps. Now, if you decide to do that with each of the action steps, it gets a little bit more tedious. And so, but you can determine how you want to craft or how you want to determine the who and the when. I've done it all three ways. So it just, it just depends on what your preference is as an organization. So that's the goal, the outcome, the action steps, the who and the when pulled together on that page. If you look at page 97, you have a worksheet that you can use later. Okay, you have a worksheet that you can use later. But that's bringing it all together, remember in the example of the strategic plan, there was a table of contents. And so all that we've covered up to this point would have a place in that table of contents per your decision. You're authoring the plan. And so you decide how you want that information to show up in your plan, in the deliverable. You decide how you want it to show up, which brings us to page 98. Like writing and implementing the plan, pulling it all together, the design, the layout, the format, the content, bringing it all together and writing and pulling and bringing that plan together. Remember the example, the Greater High Point Food Alliance example and the REACH example. You know, they had two, they were designed a little differently, different approach, but the organization decides how you want to pull all that together. Once you have it, once you have the plan, you've developed it, it's all together, one deliverable, one document, then it's important to decide how are you going to monitor and track? How are you going to monitor and track your progress? And team, if you could go to slide monitoring and tracking progress. So we have it, it's all together. It's done. It's a plan. We got it in our hands. Now we're getting ready to implement. We got staff on board. We got the board of directors on board. We got everybody on board. And so we're going to monitor and track our progress specifically as it relates to achieving the goals, seeing the outcome come to fruition. Goal achievement, action steps, outcome achieved, that aligns with the goal achievement, monitor and tracking progress. So we decide how we're going to do that. I do think it's important to share challenges that you're having also. So when you're doing the monitoring and tracking, you've got in your plan a section for every goal, action step, outcomes, that family of information. You might also share any challenges that you're having in the implementation. So the monitoring and tracking your progress. So goal achievement, challenges, and lessons learned. Like what have we learned about our organization and our effort to achieve these goals? What have we learned? And what successes can we celebrate? What successes can we celebrate? Always build in celebration points. Try to build in some celebratory moments as you're implementing this plan. Yes, you can do a check-in every year and you can give an update, but I would find it very hard to believe that you're not noticing some things as you move along during the course of the year. You just have to determine when you want to share and report out. Some nonprofits do report outs quarterly. Some nonprofits have a strategic planning update during their board meetings. So, you just have to decide how you want to, when you want to share your monitoring and tracking progress and who you want to share it with. That's important to think about. It does come in handy too when you're doing your annual report or your impact report. That's important. Once you've got that down pat, we already talked about this next point, which is the evaluation and revision of the plan. The plan expires, the plan ends. What is that timeline? We see 3 years quite often now. You report out on how well you did over the course of the 3 years. There's more or less some kind of presentation of that. And then you're again determining who do you need to share this with, and when do you want to do that at the end of the strategic planning process. So that's kind of the very last thing in that list. And team, if we could go back to the strategic planning slide that has the page numbers. So here's where we started this morning. Here's where we started. We started by taking a look at strategic planning and what is incorporated in strategic planning. The items highlighted in blue, those items are the items when we did the capacity assessment as a cohort. These were the areas that bubbled to the top that we wanted to build our skills in terms of in the next year. This is what we all identified as being that. And so, again, strategic planning. The time frame is contingent, right? On when do you need to have the plan completed? What are some of the environmental kind of things that are going on with your organization? What kind of resources do you have? The Greater High Point Food Alliance plan that you saw, it took about 9 months to a year to like really finalize that. I think we were approving it. It was in front of the board in about 10 months. But again, that executive director was working in lockstep with the consultant and was also working in lockstep with the strategic planning committee. So that executive director had both of those resources to help him to walk through that process. And he had also been preparing like a year or two out. He knew he wanted to do this. He knew the resources he needed to do it. And so he garnered all of that. And then, you know, we were able to work with them and walk through that process in that way. So that's an important aspect of it. But here is where we are. Give us an idea when you look at this list, what has been the most useful for you in this session today? You can use the chat or you can unmute yourself. What has been the most useful? Take us back to the slide, Rebecca. Leave it on the slide for me. Thanks. Just for a minute, just so people can see it. Thank you.
We got
All right.
SWOT.
Yeah.
I
What's
think
been the
somebody
most?
was somebody getting ready to speak? Sorry, I might have talked over them. SWOT. Cecilia's plan was cool. All right. Page 63 in SWOT. Outcome statement, goal statement, formulas.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you.
I think we
All
have a
right.
hand raised. Hold on, Dr. Palmer.
Okay, yeah, go right ahead.
Okay.
I think the exercise on page 91 sort of, I mean, I'm still, there are, questions I have about it, but that was really useful to think about, going from goals to outcomes. I want to spend some time and try to think about how it applies to Digital Durham's goals. But I thought that was a really good worksheet.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else? We can go back to gallery team.
Kim was saying just walking through the entire process was really helpful and informative. Ms. Parker being able to share in our small groups was helpful. Right. It's slowing down now.
All right, great. Well, it was my pleasure to work with you all today. I'm hoping that you recover in the next 5 minutes because I know you got to go right back to your day work. But thank you for being here. We appreciate you selecting the Institute to be a resource for you as it relates to building your skills as it relates to nonprofit management. And so I look forward to working with you next week. We have fundraising and financial management. That is our topic next week. So now you know it's going to be some work because we got both of those topics together. So I'm going to hand it off to Lisa and or Rebecca, and they're going to close us out and also tee us up for next week. Thank you.
Yep.
You all have a great week.
Yep, just a few more updates to go through for you guys before I know I'm staying between you and lunch. But again, as you can see on the screen, the upcoming sessions, as Dr. Palmer's already mentioned, we also will be dropping a link to tee you up for our next session on financial management and fundraising. We just want you to be able to take a look at the information, to get familiar with it so you're not seeing it for the first time during our next session. So besides the evaluation that's been dropped in the chat, we'll also have the link to the documents that we'll be showing you next week as well, and that'll come in there shortly. Just give Rebecca a chance to get there. Quick reminder, if you're interested in becoming a member of the center, we also want to remind you of the number of member benefits and resources that we have, especially templates and things that you can use for strategic planning or whatever else that you have planned. If something's not in the resources, you can always ask us. We have several publications that have to do with strategic planning, as we'll send this stuff out in the wraparound. And finally, just as a note, I think we mentioned this during our last one, our conference will be coming up on the 19th and 20th. One of the new things that we're going to be having at the conference, if you haven't signed up already, we're going to be inviting over, we're going to go back to our list and invite all of our NPMI graduates. And we also had a coaching program graduates to come join us for a day at the conference. So if you're coming to the conference already, we're going to be holding a concurrent session on the 20th that will be led by Dr. Palmer. You get to meet her in person, yay. And we'll have another facilitator there with us, along with Rebecca and I from the program team will be there. So we'd love to see you. Look out in your emails for an invite for that shortly. Again, we're now gauging participation, so it'll be an invite to gauge your interest. And then if we hope to get enough people, and then we will send out a confirmation on whether or not this session will happen before it happens. But right now, we just want to gauge your interest to see if you're coming to the conference already, letting you know that this is going to be on the program. And if you're not coming, maybe this would engage you to hopefully come and join an hour or so with us. All right. With that, we thank you again. We're going to stay on for about 10 minutes afterwards for you to ask some additional questions, and we'll see you next week. Go get some lunch.
Lisa, make
What?
sure
What'd I
to
forget?
emphasize the link for next week.
Yeah.
It's there, but
yeah.
please
Mhm.
take a look at it
Mhm.
because all that we discuss related to financial management will
Yeah.
be related to that document. So if you
Yep.
just have a moment just to take a look at it, you don't have to study it. We're not going to give you a test or anything like that, but we do just want you to be familiar with that because it has a cadence like today. And so we want to make sure we just give you that in advance.
Yep. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.